Hello friends, and welcome to Valor, Strength of Mind. I'm Carla Garcia, and today I want to talk to you about something that is very important to me, and that is boundaries. I wish that I would have known all about boundaries when I was younger, as I feel that it would have saved me a lot of pain and suffering. But we are here now, so let's get started. So a boundary is defined as a limit that a person sets on how someone else is going to interact with them. Now this is important because when we have a limit or a rule or an expectation of how someone is going to interact with us, when that boundary is violated, we are able to separate ourselves from that individual or be able to walk away from that situation. Healthy boundaries are really important because they support our self-esteem, they help us develop a good sense of who we are and self-worth. It is more likely to help us develop healthy relationships, not only in our personal life, but also in our professional life. It's going to help us protect our inner peace because we are able to say no. It increases our self-care because we are able to understand that we are important and that taking care of our emotional, physical, and mental health is very important. It also promotes good physical health and mental well-being. That is why healthy boundaries are so important. Now, on the flip side of healthy boundaries is unhealthy boundaries. And what unhealthy boundaries means is that we have a lack of boundaries or very poor boundaries, meaning that anybody can cross them and there's really going to be no consequence to that. Now, unhealthy boundaries are very dangerous because what happens is that they affect our self-esteem in a negative way. When we have unhealthy boundaries, we're more likely to feel unworthy, unloved, and because of that, we allow other people to disrespect us or cross our boundaries left and right. It also makes us more vulnerable to fall into unhealthy relationships. People with unhealthy boundaries have a very difficult time breaking away from unhealthy relationships. And more than likely, they can jump from one relationship to another and to another because they feel that their sense of worth is based on someone else's approval. And this is called codependency. Codependency is when we need or feel that we need someone else to be able to feel a sense of worth or give us that sense of worth. It also affects our relationships in our professional work environment. Oftentimes, people who struggle with healthy boundaries will take on many projects, even when it's stretching them very thinly, because they constantly feel like they have to prove their worth. It also affects our mental health in a negative way. We're more likely to develop anxiety or depression when we constantly allow other people to cross our boundaries, and that can come through physical pain, emotional pain, or psychological abuse. It also affects our emotional and psychological state of mind, as I mentioned, because when we don't have clear expectations of what we want, oftentimes we may engage with the wrong type of people, and that can affect us negatively. And lastly, it really affects our sense of worth. So that is important because we have the right to protect our peace above all things. And when we have unhealthy boundaries, then we're willing to accept anything. And that's not okay. Because as humans, we deserve respect, we deserve love, and we deserve to be treated with worth. Now, how are unhealthy boundaries developed? Well, it's simple. As we talked about last week, we talked about unhealthy relationships, right? And the week before that, we talked about trauma and how does trauma affect our relationships and every area of our lives. Well, trauma affects the way that we develop boundaries. So an example of that is that if you grew up in a family that was dysfunctional, and I will make a whole video on dysfunctional families some other time, and we can elaborate on that. But if you grew up in a family where there was a parent who was unhealthy, who was violent, or who had you experience any of the 10 traumas that is in my first video, and if you haven't checked it out, check it out. But if you experience any of the trauma, what ended up happening is that the needs of the parent who was toxic or unhealthy took over all of the needs of the family. And you begin to understand that your boundaries were crossed left and right because you needed to attend to whatever the needs of that individual were. And not only that, but also unhealthy boundaries were modeled for you. Because if you were in a dysfunctional family or experienced trauma, then what you learn is that you stay with the person even when that person violates your boundaries and makes you feel unworthy, unappreciated, or even unloved. And that is dangerous because in reality, we all deserve to be loved, respected, and taken care of. And also, when we are in a dysfunctional family, we develop something called enmeshment. And what enmeshment is that you're unable to separate your own emotion from the emotion of the family. So if your family is in panic, you're in panic. If your family is angry, you feel angry. So a lot of times your emotion is connected to that of your family. And that can be very challenging because as you get older and as you try to develop or establish some boundaries, many times your family or the people around you who you're trying to establish that boundary with will not understand that. And that is okay, because in reality, setting boundaries is not a selfish thing. It's about taking care of yourself, but others may interpret it as selfish sometimes. And that is because it's no longer convenient for them to be able to cross boundaries with you. Now, one of the things that I want to be really mindful of is that I want to talk about the two greatest lies that we learned when we're young and we're in a traumatic or an unhealthy family. And that is one, that you have to stay with someone even when they cross your boundaries and disrespect you or make you feel negative in any manner, shape, or form. That is a lie. We don't have to stay with the person. We have the choice to walk away and to define or expect something better. And two, and most important, that we have to put up with unhealthy people or toxic people because they're family. And that is the greatest lie that somebody could have taught us. Being able to have healthy boundaries means that we have the right to cut out people from our lives who bring nothing but negativity to us. And that can mean our parents, our siblings, our aunts and uncles, our grandparents, or any family member that it's unhealthy. Now, many people may feel, well, no, it's family. Well, let's talk about family. What is family supposed to be? Family is supposed to be about love, support, healthy communication, and if a person is being unhealthy, where they're constantly putting you down, where they are being disrespectful towards you, where every time they come around, they take your peace, and you feel emotionally drained from your energy, and you feel more stressed, then that is not something healthy. And in reality, then can we really define as a healthy family? Is that a family member? Well, yeah, it's family by blood, but again, we have to set an expectation of what do we want our family to have an interaction with us. So it's okay for us to set those boundaries even when it's family. So how do we begin to develop boundaries? Simple. You can take simple steps such as watching the video that you're watching today, or going on YouTube and finding other videos on how to develop healthy boundaries. You can also read books about how do we begin to establish boundaries. Third, being aware of the emotions that come when you begin to develop a boundary. So many of the times when you are starting to develop a boundary, you're going to feel guilt. And that is because you have been conditioned to believe that the needs of others are more important than you. So you may feel guilt or you may feel selfish, but it's very important to understand that that is not the case. That it is very normal for us to say no. It is very normal for us to be able to want our inner peace and to protect it against anything or anyone. And lastly, seek out support. There's a lot of support groups that you can join, whether it's online because of the physical distancing right now, or sometimes once everything reopens, there's in-person support groups. And you can also seek out therapy. Talking to a therapist can be really helpful in being able to understand where did we develop these unhealthy boundaries and how to begin to establish healthy boundaries step by step. The important thing, friends, is to really understand that you deserve to have healthy boundaries and that it's okay to do that. And that sometimes in that process, you're going to have to set boundaries and cut off people from your life that can be friends, partners, or even family members. But that doesn't make you a bad person. That only makes you a person who is seeking to have a healthy mental state because you want better for the next generation. So I encourage you to follow some of these steps and remember that in whatever you do, to carry on with valor. Thank you for watching my video. Please don't forget to share, like, comment, and subscribe. You can also learn more about how to establish healthy boundaries at valorstrengthofmind.com or follow me on Instagram at valorstrengthofmind. Don't forget that I will be posting a new video next Thursday at 6 p.m. And next week, we're going to talk about dysfunctional families and what are the roles that people adopt in a dysfunctional family. So please don't miss it. Thank you once again for your time. And remember that in whatever you do, carry on with valor.